thank you for joining me. I'm Amy, and today I'm going to be talking about my time in the Walt Disney World College program. Now, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this channel or my gaming channel, currently on an indefinite hiatus, but I love the Disney parks. It's a surprise, I know. And actually, this month, it will have been 10 years since I left the Walt Disney World College program. So I figured, hey, what better time to sit down and talk about it? Now, these stories, they're going to be about the parks, my time, just kind of adjacent stuff that's not really important to the program, but that's what was going on while I was there. And, of course, I'll be talking about Vista Way. And, I know there's some people wanting to type Vista Way. Please don't. Please don't. I mean, if you want to do it, you're gonna do it, so, whatever. Swoozy's cool, I like his stuff, but I hate it whenever I tell a story like, oh, I haven't had Chick-fil-A since I live in Vista Way, and then, you hear somebody in the background, Vista Way. So, it just gets a little annoying. However, and I do feel like this is probably good to state at the beginning, my mental health during this time was not its greatest. We'll get into that near the end of the video, but just a heads up that parts of this video might get a little heavy. I was definitely having some depression and anxiety issues at the time. Okay, so I kind of already mentioned it, but I lived at Vista Way. There are actually 4 different apartment complexes for the college program. There's Vista Way, Chatham Square, the Commons, and Patterson Court. And, I've already mentioned Swoozy, so let's kind of go off his Vista Way video for just a second. He exaggerates about the security, yes.
They got 3 security guards, motorized gates, dogs with lasers on their heads, watchtowers with spotlights. It felt like I was pulling up to the entrance of Jurassic Park.
But not by a whole lot. There's definitely the fences. There's a bunch of security guards. If you get a ride from a coworker, they're going to have to turn around unless you want to sign them in. The guards have to see their ID. You have to sign for them. It's just a whole thing. Oh, and anytime anybody leaves the program early, they change the locks. And one time one of my roommates and I, we were out front smoking a joint. Some of these stories are gonna involve cannabis. Just a few. I liked weed. I still like weed. But anyways, my roommate and I, we were hanging out front, and I noticed a security guard heading directly our way. And I'm thinking, oh, there's no way my roommate's not seeing this person coming right at us. So I kill the joint, and I head back inside. A few moments later, my roommate comes in. Fam wasn't being used at the time. Why didn't you tell me there was a security guard? And I'm like, how did it take you that long to see them? And then all of a sudden, we hear a knock on the door. And, we're stoned. We're kind of panicking. We're just like, oh, crap. Oh, crap. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? But they never knocked again, and eventually we go back outside, and there's a note on the door saying, hey, since somebody just left this apartment, we're changing locks tomorrow. Make sure you pick up your new key. And I actually found out just a little whiles later that security guard was actually selling weed, so well, I don't want to say not a big deal, but kind of not a big deal, but they also might have been pissed that we didn't buy it from them. Not that I ever bought weed. I always bummed it off of a friend. Okay, I did buy weed from time to time, but yeah, I was that kind of stoner back then. Yeah, I used to be a scavenger stoner, so to say. I'm not that way anymore. No. I have plenty of weed, and I am very willing to share it. But my usual smoking group was just myself and 2 dudes. One dude worked as a army man from Toy Story, and the other one was a guide for Great Movie Ride, and I miss the Great Movie Ride. It bums me out so much that's not there anymore. That Mickey Mouse ride looks fine. It looks fun, actually. But it's the Great Movie Ride. I think it just needed to be updated. And almost every night, you can find my friends and I just sitting on the landing in between the 2nd and 3rd floors on the west side of apartment block 4. These guys that I hung out with were neighbors, and I have a few more neighbor stories. There's this one dude who, he lived across from me, and, well, he wasn't exactly the brightest crayon in the box. One day I see him out front and he's reading Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I think I've mentioned before, I love that book. It's one of my favorite books, if not my favorite. And so I start chatting with him about it. He wasn't exactly getting the book, and I'm like, well, why did you pick that book? He closes it, opens the front cover, and there's a sticker of a naked woman on there. That's why he chose the book. And then a little later, he actually got fired for drinking on the job. Underage drinking on the job. And when you get fired from the college program, you have 24 hours to move. Actually, less than that. I believe it's 8 a.m., maybe by 11 a.m. the next day. So you could get fired at 10 p.m. and you got to be out by 11 a.m. Ooh, that would suck. Especially since the buses would stop going to all the, like UPS and all that so you could ship your stuff. But anyways, he was talking to me and he kind of lamented that he never got to ride the Tower of Terror. Well, after you get fired, they take your Disney ID, which you can no longer get in the parks for free with. He did, however, have his Blue Gate Pass. And now, technically, those aren't valid after you get fired either, but, well, we went to Hollywood Studios and we got it to work. So he and we just go on Tower of Terror, and every single time the elevator drops, his legs just fly up like wet noodles. Like, just like, okay, we're going up, woo! We're going up, woo! Just every time his legs flew up. It was pretty entertaining. Oh, and it was actually his apartment. Some of his roommates had me drink my first liquor, which was tequila. And now, Vista Way is the party complex, even earning the nickname Vista Lay. I think we can gather what that implies. But this introvert couldn't talk from experience. At my worst, I would just smoke a few bowls and just chill. And not the Netflix and chill kind of chill, just actually chill. The worst I ever did was I snuck into an apartment after the neighbors had left, and, well, they left a lot of stuff, and a cleaning crew had to come in to clean up the apartment afterwards, and they left the door open. So I snuck over there, and I kind of used the apartment as my own little personal grocery store. I mean, I picked up some bratwurst, some vanilla vodka, just a few other things. But for some reason, I actually left Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 for the 360. So, what about my roommates? There were 6 of us living in a 3-bedroom apartment, all 6 of us being assigned male at birth. I would say all male, but I don't identify as male. So, I must have a few stories, and yeah, I do have a few, but not a whole lot. There were a few housing changes throughout the time. There were a couple of guys that we just never saw because they were always hanging out with their girlfriends. So really, it was kind of like 3 or 4 of us were living there at most. At the beginning of our program, Tropical Storm Faye had actually been coming through Florida, and my roommates and we decided to go on a drive and smoke a couple of bowls. I told you weed's gonna come up a few times. And, we just were traveling about, just looking at everything, just kind of amazed at all the weather going on. Probably dumb to drive during that, but we lived. Also, Orlando didn't get it the worst. The most damage was done in northern Florida, so it wasn't too bad. But anyways, we end up at a red light, and there's a cop next to us. Now, obviously, we're not going to keep smoking, but these two, I'm in the back seat, and these two just shut up and remain forward. So I continue talking. I'm like, oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. They're like, fam, shut up. There's a police right there. Head forward. Don't say anything. Wouldn't that be more suspicious? Fam, shut up. Like, just stoner logic. And then, well, actually, the guy that was driving that day, it was his car. Later, it turns out he didn't know that there was a Star Wars ride at that point. So I'm like, yeah, there's Star Tours, because he loves Star Wars. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, Star Tours. It's pretty great. It's a motion simulator, but it's pretty great. Dude, let's go right now. So we went and rode Star Tours, and at the end of the ride, his face was just so lit up. He was just so like, he was just a little kid. One of my roommates kind of got a little flirty with me, like a little too much, and it's like, dude, I'm not bi. Knock it off. I'm actually pan, but, whatever. But he wasn't a terrible roommate by any means. It just, when he wasn't doing that, he was actually tolerable. Yeah, that got annoying. And despite the fact that the first batch of roommates that I had, even though there was 6 of us, all having been from culinary school, the only thing I remember being cooked on the stove is deep-fried Oreos. Like, we spent most of our meals. Hot Pockets, we ordered pizza, we went to Wendy's, we went to Chick-fil-A, we go to Golden Corral, which is within walking distance. We go to CC's Pizza, which is within walking distance the other way. I mean, yeah, we didn't cook. And then eventually I would have a couple of roommates from Brazil. So, one cool thing about the college program is you get to meet young adults, not only from throughout the country, but from throughout the world. It does suck, though, that I almost said Nintendo. It does suck, though, that Disney does ask some of the Asian students, and probably other countries too, to anglicize their names. Okay, so now that we've got roommates and friends from the program covered, let's talk about my favorite part, the parks. And since, the topic of weed has been coming up, I smoked here, and a few times here, which was kind of a dumb area because it was a dead end. But the reason I kind of liked this was because it was open and I could see around me. The only park that I never smoked in was Animal Kingdom, and, well, that was actually the park that I visited the least. It wasn't a bad park by any means. It's actually a really good park. But during that time, it always closed super early. Like, during November, December, it would close at like 5 p.m. Which, I get it, those animals need sleep, so it makes sense, but it did end up being my least visited. Okay, so the college program had its own bus service that would take you from, your job, the parks, grocery stores, just stuff like that, and there was a bus for each park, and its backstage areas as well. There's one for Magic Kingdom, one for Epcot, Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, all that stuff. And I had to rely on that bus system because I was not driving at the time. The Magic Kingdom bus would drop you off at the transportation center. The Disney Hollywood Studios bus would drop you off at the front of Hollywood Studios. The Animal Kingdom bus would do the exact same too. The Epcot bus, however, would drop you off backstage. So every time I went to Epcot, I entered through backstage. You might think the security might have a problem with that, but not really. As long as you have Disney Company ID, you're good. And, it took me until a couple of years ago. I'm just, sitting around doing whatever, and it dawns on me, wait, I could have just used the transportation center bus to go to the Epcot monorail. I think the only time I ever used the proper Epcot entrance was once when family was in town, and I had actually gone there using the Disney program bus, not the college program bus, but the actual bus system for guests. And the whole backstage of Epcot, I actually enjoyed it. I mean, well, it wasn't too exciting or anything, but, I'm just walking through the main hall. There's a whole bunch of lockers on the right and a whole bunch of different stuff on the left, including costuming services. And since I was in the culinary program, I just had to do the culinary costuming. And for the most part, it's the same costume throughout all the resort. So what I ended up doing was every time I visited Epcot, which was at least once a week, I would have a backpack full of the dirty clothes that I needed to drop off. I dropped those off at the costuming, go into the park from the entrance between the Mexico Pavilion and Future World. I don't know what that abandoned building is called. Well, okay, maybe not abandoned. It's not used for much. And I would head directly to Spaceship Earth because, every time I visited, I had to go and thank those Phoenicians. They invented the alphabet,
Remember how easy it was to learn your ABCs? Thank the Phoenicians. They invented them.
And despite the fact that I was in plainclothes backstage, like I said, nobody really cared. I don't think I got questioned once about it. And, if I wanted to go to the Wonders of Life Pavilion and go steal the Buzzy animatronic, oh, that would have been so easy, I think. Good thing nobody's ever done that, but hypothetically it'd be easy. Do not blame me if it goes missing. And then when I was done visiting Epcot, I would go pick up some new costumes. And one time I decided to head into Epcot a little early, and, well, it actually turned out that I was there before Rope Drop. So, I'm basically in the park by myself, again, in plainclothes, just walking around. I saw a few cast members here and there, but nobody said boo. That was kind of a neat experience. And I lost a few roommates along the time, getting fired, leaving the program of their own volition, whatever. But one of my roommates, who left of his own volition, his last night there, he's like, hey fam, you want to go get some dinner, my treat? I'm like, dude, you're paying? Hell yeah. I'm always down for free food. So what we do is we head to Epcot, and he has this stack of meal tickets that he got at work, but they had never been signed or dated. So, like, normally they'd have a date saying it must be used on this date, but his boss never did that. So he just had a stack full of them. And we go into the Epcot cafeteria, and we just have a feast. I don't remember what we had, but we had a lot of it. Now, when you go to the college program, it takes a week or two before you get your company ID, and before you get your company ID, you can go into the parks for free. I mean, if you really want to pay, you can, but just wait. You're going to get that company ID and get into the parks. What I would do is I would go visit downtown Disney and just kind of hang out. And the first night that I got into Orlando, before I actually had gone to Vista Way, got my assignment, all that, I stayed at Disney Resort and went to downtown Disney. And I'm just hanging around, just walking about. And I'm entering Pleasure Island from not the Disney Quest side, the other side of downtown Disney. And there's a video playing. It's a music video. And I hear some music that just sounds... Well, I thought it sounded like if Blondie did hip-hop and collabed with Kanye. Now, the song was American Boy by Estelle, and some people have called me crazy for thinking it sounds kind of like Blondie, but I stand by it.
Take me on a trip, I'd like to go someday. Take me to New York, I'd love to see LA.
Also, Estelle is awesome because, well, she voices Garnet in Steven Universe. The only other song I remember hearing that came out at this time was T.I.'s Live Your Life, which I actually really disliked at first, but I eventually learned to love it. It's not as good as Dragostea Dinte, however it's pronounced, but it's still pretty good. And my favorite place in downtown Disney was actually the Virgin Megastore. I don't remember ever buying a single thing, but I actually loved to go in the back and look at all the different records that they had, especially the picture discs. And there was actually one picture disc that I really thought was cool. It was the 12-inch single of Kanye's Stronger. And, well, just every time, it was there, and it's like, oh, I want this so bad. Remember, this was a time when Kanye was good, and he was kind of out there at the time already, but he hadn't gone off the deep end. So, I wanted it, and, well, I never bought it until I got out of the program. However, it kind of skipped, played a little weird, stuff like that, so I turned it into a clock. It's actually usually just hanging off screen about right... Yeah, where my hand would be pointing. I hardly ever set it to the right time, though. Like, what time does this say? 10:40? It's 3:16 a.m. And here's the back of the album. Also, you got Daft Punk right over here. So that's really cool. Kinda don't like the clock as much now that Kanye's... Well, Kanye'd, but... I don't feel like giving it up. Again, as Daft Punk. So, I don't have too many stories, so let's speed up a little bit. Animal Kingdom. No real interesting stories there. Next. Magic Kingdom? Yeah, I've got a couple of those. I remember, once again, Tropical Storm Faye was coming in, and I'm just hanging out in the parks. I remember I just had my cup of McDonald's French fries that they sold in between Adventureland and Frontierland. I believe it was Frontierland proper, but is kind of in between. And I'm just hanging out with those, and the rain just starts coming down. Like, I am soaked head to toe, and I'm just thinking to myself, well, I can't get any more wet. I'm going on Splash Mountain. And there's no line for it, which didn't make sense for me. If there were people in the park, there's no way they weren't wet, so what harm would going on Splash do? This next one's a little embarrassing, but I go on Space Mountain, and, well, the CMs are like, okay, how many? One? Okay, go on in row 3. And, I'm following, it's like, okay, there's nobody in the batch before me, so I'm gonna just step into the number 3 position on the batch before me, just so I could get on just a little sooner. And so I put my leg in, and the car starts moving. They were able to stop it pretty soon thereafter, but yeah, I made them stop the ride, at least at the station, because I was too eager, and nearly fell out of the vehicle. And last, and well, probably least, definitely out of all the parks, Hollywood Studio was my least favorite, but I've got a couple of stories for there too. One time I was there, and the whole day, every time I went to the smoking section, I ran into this one family from Israel. They were a nice family. We got to chatting a little bit. Well, I mean, I really just talked to the mom and dad. The kids were usually like a little further away, within eye shot, but not in the conversation. So I'm just chatting with them, blah, 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 blah. I can say I've smoked a cigarette from Israel. Not significantly different than ones from America, so, there's that. But, yeah. I guess that's neat. And then a different time I was in Hollywood Studios, and I decided to go on the Great Movie Ride. Well, I had never seen my friend on the ride, so I'm like, hey, I should ask if he's on the ride, get in his vehicle. Definitely overstepping my boundaries. And, well, I just kind of expected to be in the vehicle somewhere. No, they have you sit aside until you're ready for their vehicle. And they sit you right next to them. Which, okay, whatever. Again, it definitely was a boundary overstep, so that's not cool. But that's not the part that is interesting, or that's not the part that I dislike about this story. They may dislike that part about this story, but yeah. So, there's that scene where the vehicle gets hijacked, and yeah, the hijacker, in this case it was one of the gangster hijackers, they're talking to me in character, and it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, just too awkward for me. Too awkward. Alright, so before I get into my actual job during the program, let's just go over some odds and ends. I never went to any other Orlando attraction. When we were driving around during Tropical Storm Faye, we did pass by SeaWorld, so I at least saw it, but I never went there. Never went to Universal Studios, never saw it, in fact. I did see that Nickelodeon Hotel, which, that always looked kind of cool, but never went there. I mean, why would you? If you're not staying there. I mean, there's a water park, but Disney has water parks. I got a discount for them because I worked at Disney. But, water parks, not really my thing. The busing system, sometimes they did have programs set up for the college program students to go there through the busing system, but, my schedule just never worked out with it, or I was just feeling too lazy. And then once there was a backstage tour of the Haunted Mansion that was being advertised for around the busing system, and it's like, oh, I love the mansion, I want to go to this, and it was on a Friday the 13th, like, oh, I am so excited, so excited. I worked that day. I couldn't go. So that bummed me out so much. There was another time where I saw Expedition Everest being advertised for, a backstage tour of that, but I didn't go to that one either. Oh, and alligators in Florida? That is definitely a thing. I definitely saw alligators just hanging out on the side of the road sometimes. I mean, they never got too close to me or anything, but yeah, they're not rare. Oh, I didn't see them too much in the fall and winter, but when I first got there, they were plentiful. Probably because there was so much water from the tropical storm around that they had more hospitable environment for them so that they could venture out further and further. And I actually enjoyed the weather of Florida just fine. Yeah, it was humid, but I actually found it cozy. As I said, I never got too crazy during my time, but I did see Vista Way get a little excited at times. After Barack Obama won the 2008 elections, there was a group of students that just went outside the student center, which was within throwing distance from my window. Not within my throwing distance, but like Ichiro Suzuki's throwing distance. Yeah, they just gathered there, and there was a big crowd. They were whooping, they were hollering, they were having a good time, and woke me up. So, I found out who won pretty early. I found out who won, so there's that, but yeah, I definitely remember that. And, the early mornings of November 1st, 2008, so when all the people were coming in from Halloween, when all the people were coming in from their late night Halloween debauchery, whatever, I saw a lot of Heath Ledger Jokers coming in. Like, a lot. And again, that was the early hour morning of the next day. I'm sure if I had been up the night of Halloween, I would have seen much more. And I actually almost forgot this story, and I'm glad I remembered it, but one time I'm walking around a shopping center, and a car pulls up next to me, and they're like, hey, how do I get to the Hooters? I think the car was like a 1988 Toyota Camry. I don't actually remember the make of the car, but for some reason that's what I'm picturing. And there's just like 3 or 4 dudes in there, and yeah, they pull up next to me. They're like, "Hey, fam." Again, nobody said fam at this point. "How do we get to Hooters?" "Oh, sorry, guy, I don't know." "You don't know?" "No, I don't. I know it's somewhere over there, but I don't know how to get there." "You don't know how to get there?" "No, I'm being honest with you." And they were so pissed at me, and they just slam on the gas and just peel out. And then, this one's pretty embarrassing if I'm being honest. But one time, I was hanging out with a coworker. We were driving around smoking weed, and I mean, of course we were. And I'm in the back seat, and I'm the one to kill the bull. And, just like, okay, I've got ashes here. What am I going to do with them? Well, there's no windows back here, so I can't get rid of them that way. I'm not going to just, toss them on the floor of her car. So what am I going to do? I was telling a coworker this story while writing, my script or at least some stuff down. And, she's like, "So let me guess, you ate them?" No. I can say I've never snorted cocaine or anything like that, but I have snorted cannabis ashes. And the people in the front, my coworker and her roommate, they had no idea what I was doing. I was just problem solving, but they had no idea what I had just snorted. We never hung out again. And now it's time to talk about my job there. It's going to be a little less fun. Before I continue, I should probably add a disclaimer here. During this, I am going to be talking about depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it is going to come up. So I was assigned the artist palette at Saratoga Springs Resort and Spa, a hotel that's part of Disney Vacation Club, which the Vacation Club is basically Disney timeshare. I definitely would have preferred somewhere in one of the parks, but what can you do? Well, the artist palette was a quick service restaurant with a small show kitchen. There was more kitchen in the back, behind some doors and all that, but really, that was for, prep work and stuff like that. Most of the work got done up front. And somebody, I'm going to blame Eisner just because he's a really easy scapegoat because he loved to micromanage. So I'm just blaming Eisner, even though it probably wasn't him. Somebody decided, hey, the artist palette kitchen does not need to be too big since all of these rooms have kitchens in them. I don't know if every single room had a kitchen, but a lot did. They're like, there's stuff over there that they could buy to cook in their kitchen. They're going to be relying on that. We don't need to make this kitchen very big or anything like that. Look, this had to have been the same person that thought Euro Disney was going to have 500,000 people at their opening. They had 25,000 at their opening. Because, breakfast shift was rough. Lunch and dinner were okay. They weren't too bad, but I always ended up working breakfast. And in the artist palette, there's 2 stations. There's the flatbread pizza station, and then there's the sandwich and salad station. The latter is where I was usually stationed. During breakfast, the flatbread pizza person would make breakfast pizzas and omelets, and me on the other station would make waffles. We had 8 waffle irons, 4 big waffle irons, and then 4 mini waffle irons that had 4 waffles per iron. And I know I did other stuff too during breakfast service, but the waffles, those are what haunt me. I saw a picture of a Mickey waffle the other day, and I kind of felt my stomach drop. I'm not going to go as far as to say I was triggered, but I definitely got uncomfortable when I saw that Mickey waffle. I had to keep those going at all time. It's as soon as one comes up, I had to go back and drop some more. And again, small kitchen. There was 8 irons. There were 2 behind me, 2 on a cart on my side, and then 4 on my workstation. Well, I guess it's all on my workstation, but on the cutting board and stuff like that. So I had to keep those going. It was hectic because people wanted a quick meal before they'd go to the parks. So it was crazy, but I had to keep them going. The problem got to be around 10 a.m. I would have to start prepping for lunch and stuff like that. Again, small kitchen. It was impossible to have mise en place done there. It's like, oh crap, okay, now to get this, I'm gonna head to the back kitchen, grab whatever I need, and during that, I'm gonna have to slow down my waffle making for just a moment. And then, making these other stuff I would also eat into the time, stuff like that. It just got to be hell. And for anybody that doesn't work in restaurants, restaurant industry is actually very stressful. In fact, it is one of the highest professions of drug abusers. It's long hours, little pay, high stress. It's not very great. And it's actually during this time that I'm like, ooh, I just spent a lot of money on student loans for culinary school, and I actually don't know that I like this. So my depression was getting bad, and, well, I made a lot of dumb mistakes working there, so I got chewed out a lot. Like, a lot. And, my anxiety, whenever I got chewed out, I'd start crying, and my boss is yelling at me. It was usually just one particular boss, who I'm going to call Chef Andy. Not his name, but that's what I'm going to go with. And actually, he yelled at me from not too far off stage. Like, there was a little storage room right off stage, and there was a half wall between the storage room and his office. Well, okay, there was a rotating set of bosses that would, rotate. So, their office. It's kind of the same room, but only a half wall. And it's just one of those little push doors to that storage room. I'm pretty confident that guests could have heard him yelling at me. And actually, he yelled at me one time on stage, which, if you know anything about Disney, that's a huge no-no. Just no. So my anxiety was getting bad. And again, I made some dumb mistakes. Like, okay, this is probably more embarrassing than the snorting ashes thing, although that was so dumb. But one time we had an inspection coming along, and, it wasn't a state inspection, it was just Disney inspection, making sure we're gonna pass any state inspection, basically. Our license wasn't on the line, anything like that. They're just making sure we're good. And this dude is, investigating, or is, following us, checking everything out, and for whatever reason, after I drop something on the floor, I pick it back up and put it in the container it came from. Why did I do that? I don't know. I don't know how, in my mind. I made sense of that, but I did that. Oh boy. So yeah, I definitely got chewed out for that one, but that's like seriously one of the only things I can actually remember me doing wrong. I know I did more. I know I did. I'm not saying that I'm not at any kind of fault, but my boss was really... Chef Andy was really abusive. It felt like once a week when he was there, I would get chewed out. And he usually worked there a couple of times a week, but yeah, at least once a week, I got chewed out and yelled at. Kind of near the end, it chilled out. It actually turned out that he was getting a lot of pressure from his higher-ups too, and we actually kind of came to an understanding near the end. But it still was a lot. And every day, I was just so high stress. It's just like, oh god, this is going to be the day I'm getting fired. Oh, I cannot do this. Oh, I'm getting fired. Oh, I cannot do this. I can't. I'm failing. I'm failing at something I went to school for, and I'm wasted so much money. I cannot do this. I cannot. And like I said, my mental health got really bad, and it got to the point where I constantly contemplated taking my own life. In fact, I definitely had some schemes hatching in my head on how I could take my own life using Disney attractions. I'm not going to go into the details of how, because no, that's not happening. But they were there. Whether or not these ideas would have worked, I don't know. That's one of the reasons I never tried them, because I was uncertain. But also because that would make my mom end up having to pay my FAFSA loans. And I couldn't do that to her. And I don't want to say working for Disney or working in the college program is terrible. I know there are other people that have their horror stories working for Disney. What my problem was, I had a terrible boss. I was having a mental breakdown, more or less. My mental health was suffering. I was barely eating, barely drinking any water. I was smoking a pack of menthols a day. I was not taking care of myself. I had stopped all meds, including Prozac. I was just a mess. I was a mess. But I'm still here. So what saved me? Well, like I said, I couldn't saddle my parents with the student loans because it was just way too much. But also just getting close to the end. It's just like, okay, the last 2 months, it's just like, okay, I could just start counting down the days. This is doable. I can do this. So it's just like, okay, I only have 2 months left. Oh, I only have a month and a half left. You know, whatever. It helped. It helped. And like I said, Chef Andy and I, we kind of came to an understanding, and we actually just talked. We talked, like, dreams, aspirations, stuff like that. And, you know, that really changed the dynamic. I still do blame him a little bit. Again, not Disney as a whole, although, I mean, they did set up a crappy system. But, yeah, it got better. Until Monday, January 26th, 2009. That is the day I received my third write-up. My second and third write-ups actually weren't something I had done. They were something that happened on my break, like some food hadn't got labeled, and I got the blame for it. And I tried to say, hey, I was on the break. If you want to talk to somebody responsible, talk to this person who was covering me both times. And the second time I got written up, so my second write-up, the first one was legit me. The second write-up was her, and my boss is like, hey, look, you can argue these things, get them annulled. It's not a big deal. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, that's cool. Also, how many write-ups do I get? Oh, you get 7. So, a little while later, after one of my weekends, I go in and, you know, I'm doing my shift, and a few hours in, one of my bosses is like, hey, can you come over here? So they pull me into the office. I'm like, okay, what's up? And they're like, so on Friday, you didn't label food again. I'm like, during what time? And they're like, oh, 10:30. I'm like, fam, I was on my break. He's like, okay, whatever, but it was your station. Like, but I was on a break. Just like, okay, whatever. I get 7 write-ups. I'm just going to sign this, whatever. Sign. This is my third write-up. You're fired. What? I was told I got 7 write-ups. Yeah, that's only for union employees. College program's not union. I got escorted out of the building and had to make arrangements on getting out of the program. And you would think that getting fired from Disney, from a Disney park, well, okay, it was a resort. You would think getting fired from Disney World would be devastating for me. And yes, it was. But after I got fired, I went to the bus services and I'm like, hey, all my early morning rides from before the bus services are actually running, I'm not going to need those for the next week. And they're like, okay. And also, I apparently had a big smile on my face and they're like, why are you so damn happy? And I'm just like, I just got fired. So, yeah, getting fired from Disney was, well, it sucked and was heartbreaking. But it was also good for my mental health. I mean, no, getting fired isn't, but it's better than me continuing to work there. So I had to call my mother, say, hey, I just got fired. She was able to actually book a relatively cheap flight, I believe, although I had like a 4-hour layover in Kansas City, Missouri, I believe it was. Also, when I was at that airport, again, I'm not sure if it was Kansas City, Missouri. It could have been Kansas City, Kansas. Could have been somewhere else in Missouri. I'm not 100% sure. I was actually able to walk outside and back in without getting stopped by security once. That was kind of neat. But that is my time with the Walt Disney World College program. Do I have some more stories? Yeah, I just can't remember them. And again, it's not exactly Disney's fault. I mean, yes, they set up a system that they exploit college students so much. But I know people who have done the program and absolutely loved it. I know somebody that went there 4 times and loved it every single time. So, results may vary. This is just my experience. Well, thank you for joining me, everyone. Happy New Year. You know, this 2019 now. But yeah, that's been 10 years. It actually kind of feels a little good to get this off my chest, but it also kind of sucks. You know, I don't want to say, hey, I got fired from a job. I've actually been fired from 2, but let's not get into that. My current employment, I've been there for, wow, almost 9 years. So that's something that's a streak that's been broken, hopefully. Oh, and if anybody knows anybody that makes reproduction Disney name tags, especially Year of a Million Dreams era, could you link it down below? Because I actually kind of want to get a new name tag with my proper name. It has my dead name on there. Oh, it's behind the Haunted Mansion book. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I would like to get one with my proper name instead of my dead name. So yeah, again, if you know anywhere that does those, link down below, please. And I actually forgot this story, but when I was at the Disney program for a small while, my name tag had been broken. Actually, it broke twice, even though I had super glued it. And for a small while, I was too lazy to fix it. I was Mike from Cincinnati, Ohio. They didn't care what the name tag said, as long as you were wearing a name tag. But hey, thanks for joining, everyone. Take care. Remember that you are valid. Anybody in the Walt Disney World College program having a hard time, I'm sorry. I don't have any suggestions. I'm sorry. Just know that you're not alone. But anyways, thanks for watching. Take care. Remember that you are valid. Bye-bye.